A U.S.-led resolution to ban the use of nuclear weapons in space received dozens of co-sponsors at the UN, but one country vetoed that ban. Which country was that, Lauren?
Shockingly, Russia.
Oh.
I'm kidding. They call this proposed ban to prevent an arms race in outer space a propaganda stunt. But Russian President Vladimir Putin says publicly that Russia has no intention of deploying nuclear weapons in space. So what exactly is he hiding?
A million different things.
Yeah.
That's the answer to that question. Thank you, Lauren. Now, U.S. troops are set to build a new floating pier off the coast of northern Gaza. It's supposed to help get more humanitarian aid into the territory. So what could possibly go wrong? Former State Department official Christian Whiton joins me now. Christian, I hate to say it, but I do think of that 1980 explosion by Hezbollah at the Marine barracks in Lebanon, and I just wonder if we're putting U.S. troops in the wrong place at the wrong time again.
Well, it's pretty weird, David, what they're doing here. They're saying they're going to build this. This is the U.S. Army that's going to build it with naval support. But they say they're not going to put any troops on the ground in Gaza. I'm not sure how you actually construct a pier without ever touching the ground. That would be an engineering feat. But they think they're not putting any U.S. service people into harm's way here. It's important to remember, too, this was just tacked on at the very last minute to President Biden's State of the Union address. Yes. Somewhat of a surprise to much of the military. It's really, this goes back to winter. This goes back to the Democrats, the White House being pressured for not delivering humanitarian aid to Gaza. It's more of a political move than a military move.
All right. Next one, Christian, an Israeli government minister is torching President Biden. He claims Biden's policies are weak and, quote, harming Israel. He also says if he were an American citizen, he would vote for Trump and Republicans. They're strong words, but you know, the Israelis are very good at taking the temperature of the American public, better than anybody in the world. And they see that Americans are now fed up with these pro-Hamas demonstrations. They don't have all the power that they did have a month or even a week ago. Do they think that they probably have a free hand now to go into Rafah and take care of Hamas once and for all?
I think they do, because what goes around comes around. The Democratic Senate leader, Chuck Schumer, basically said Netanyahu has to go. He said that explicitly. It's very clear the White House wants Netanyahu out. The White House has said don't go into Rafah, but this is an imperative if actually you want to finally get control over Hamas. So I think that Israel feels it must do this. It will do this regardless. And the House just made it very clear that despite some grumbling from people like Chuck Schumer, it will support Israel in this war, this critical war. So, yeah, White House is sort of running out of friends. Incidentally, why is the White House so hard on our allies? Have they ever called for leaders to go in Iran or North Korea or China?
Well, yes, the answer to that question is the people who used to scream the loudest about U.S. interference in foreign elections was the left, were the Democrats. When Reagan was doing it, when Nixon was doing it, they were screaming to high heaven. Now they're the ones doing it. They're telling democracies who they should vote for. I mean, it's just outrageous, no?
It is, and it extends into Europe. Biden basically has a Europe-first foreign policy that does not extend to center-right governments in Europe. If you look at Orban, the Hungarian prime minister, reelected many times, very popular with his people,
yes,
has basically been the subject of political warfare by the United States.
And at the same time, they're very friendly to leftists like Lula down in Brazil.
That's right. They're very happy that Bolsonaro, center-right reformer, got voted out narrowly. And, you know, if you look at it, they entered office with the intent of ostracizing Saudi Arabia, which is a human rights violator, but they've snuggled up to Iran, which is a human rights violator par excellence. And it sort of, you know, comes back to what Jane Kirkpatrick said, a blame America first foreign policy. If you're anti-American, you tend to be in pretty good stead in this White House.
Unbelievable. All right. Next one, Christian, we want to turn to the situation in Ukraine. U.S. is giving them, of course, $60 billion in new foreign aid and an additional billion for military assistance. But despite this, Biden administration officials are skeptical it's going to be enough to win the war. So, Christian, what does Ukraine need to do, if it's at all possible, to win this war?
The White House has never really articulated a strategy or defined what victory would be. Some have said it means pushing Russia all the way out of Ukraine to pre-2014, so even returning Crimea to Ukraine. It's very unlikely that there's the political will in Europe and the United States to do what that would take, or that Ukraine has the means. Basically, what this money is a strategy not to lose. It hopefully prevents Russia from making major inroads this summer in the fighting season. But certainly there's no plan in here, just because also Ukraine is fighting a country with 5 times its population, a much larger economy, much greater manufacturing capabilities. And I think basically this is a strategy to kick the can past the election.
But does it at least tie up Russia to the point where they would not be thinking about extending their reach to other places in Eastern Europe?
That's certainly the hope. I think, because of their poor performance, their humiliation back when the war started in 22, it was always unlikely that we'd see Russian tanks rolling into Lithuania or Poland. If you can't actually even take Ukraine or even the eastern provinces, all of them of Ukraine, then an invasion of Central Europe was probably not in the cards. But certainly, yes, this will make Russia have to think harder about an offensive into Ukraine in the summer.
Very quickly, is there any accounting for that money going to Ukraine? We know that it's a history with a lot of corruption and a country with a history of a lot of corruption. Is there any accounting for it, or could they still be siphoning off money in the wrong way?
When you spend that much money that fast in a war zone, this is going to happen. The CIA director, Burns, was over sort of complaining about this, saying, there needs to be less corruption. Obviously, no corruption would be ideal, but no, there will, of course, be shrinkage, if you will.
Christian Whiton, good to see you.